Hi, my name is Femi. I'm a writer for DashFight. So yeah, I'm really excited to get to do this with you. I've been following you for quite a bit, and I'll call myself a big fan, especially of your
Thank you.
Marisa.
I appreciate
Yeah,
it. Nice to meet you, Femi.
yeah, nice to meet you too. So, wanted to get started with a couple of questions. Are you game ready for that?
Yeah, of course.
Excellent. So I'm just going to ask a couple of questions. My first question essentially is that you've come a long way from your first Evo, which was in 2017, and it's been a while. This is 2023. Essentially,
Yeah.
it's been about 6 years. So in that time, you've had time to grow and mature as a player. If you had any thing that you would say has been the lesson, your biggest lesson in that period of time, or your biggest lessons over that time, what would you say it is?
Um, Basically, I think the biggest thing that that made a difference was embracing losses.
Mm,
So a lot of the times when I lose, I notice because I lose not because the player is, genuinely a lot better than me, but usually I lose because I'm too afraid of losing that I start playing bad. You know, when you're too scared of something that you become too nervous, you become too shaky to do
yeah,
to do it or whatever.
yeah,
It's like kind of like a job interview. You're too scared to screw it up. You just happen to screw it up, yeah. So I think that's pretty much the biggest thing I've noticed is that once I started embracing losses, and everyone loses at some point. Like
yeah,
there's nothing to be scared of. When you go to a tournament, you should expect a loss. Like everyone's there. There's going to be only one winner. The rest of them are going to be losers. So so might as well just go there, embrace the loss, and just play your game, play whatever what you traveled for. Play the game that you can play. Once you get that out of the way, and once you become content with losing, not happy with losing, but more
yeah.
content. Like you do what you can, you prep hard, and when you lose, then you realize what you have to work on aside from your nerves. Like everything else you have to work on is going to be in game, not outside of the game, which is which is good enough. That's still an improvement because now you can see how to improve.
Right, right, right. Well, that's an intriguing answer. It's kind of struck me because I remember you mentioned something along those lines in your documentary, the one that you had with Big Bird, with Angry Bird, sorry, when you
Yeah.
both went to Evo. Yeah, you mentioned something around that when you
Yes.
after you lost out. So when you mentioned that, that actually did strike me. But then it leads to a bit of a follow up question. You spoke to Logan Sama recently in the First to 10 interview,
Yeah.
and one of the questions he asked you was the larger prize pool for Street Fighter and fighting games in general now. You said it has changed your approach to how you approach fighting games because now it's more of a job for you because there's so much at stake. And when you talk about accepting losses and the pressure that comes in this high stakes competitions, how does this added pressure of higher price pools and you actually fighting for your career, how does that come to how you deal with pressure in tournaments moving forward?
I mean, if my only source of income was prize money, then
Mm,
it would be different. It would be a different story. But thankfully, I'm doing good enough that I don't have to rely on a prize pool to be my source of income, main source of income. But it did change in a way to actually stop prepping twice as hard as I used to be, as I used to do. Start studying the matchups, the brackets you have. Start preparing more than one character. There's basically no time to play bad matchups in this game, or not even bad matchups, just matchups where you struggle in. They don't have
mm,
to be bad, but it could be your personal struggle. There's no time to play them. Like if you struggle in this matchup, have another character, prepare another character, and play that character. If you struggle this way, maybe try out modern. I've tried out modern Marisa. I tried out
mhm.
classic, but I gave up on modern since I have Rashid now. So having two characters right now is perfect. But when I go to a tournament, like for example, Gamers 8, it had a lot of money, and
Yeah.
I wasn't really every match I played. I wasn't really thinking about the money. I was more so thinking that I wanted to win. I didn't want to lose. Money was basically a bonus in that way. Like I wanted to win for myself, not for the money. I mean, obviously the money would be a very nice motivation, but
Yes, yeah, definitely.
yeah, when I lost, I didn't feel like, oh, I missed out on money. No, when I lost, I felt like I could have played better. I could have played better. I could have won, and I don't like how that ended. But I wasn't thinking about missing out on the money. I wasn't thinking about how much I made. All of this comes right after you settle down, you start thinking about how much you made, how much you lost, and all of that. But the first thing that pops to in my mind, whether I win or lose, is that okay, I'm glad I won. All right, I played bad. I could have done this, and that.
Oh, okay. That's
So
a
I'm
good.
playing for myself mostly.
Yeah,
Firstly.
that way you're able to take some pressure off that can come with having all these expectations on your shoulders. I wanted to ask about Rashid since you brought him up and you said he's a character. You're well known for Rashid in Street Fighter 5, and now he's come into Street Fighter 6. I see that in most of your streams recently you've been using a lot of Rashid, and you just mentioned that you dropped Modern Marisa. Is he now your main for tournaments, or are you still maining Marisa for the most part?
I'm still maining Marisa for the most part, but a character with a reversal, you never know when you're gonna need a reversal in a 2 out of 3 setting. And a 3 out of 5, playing Marisa is good enough because now you get to see, because you get to adapt to your opponent, you get to see what they're on and everything. And a 2 out of 3, you don't have time to adapt, so
No.
you either play too ham, too go in, just keep going in, too aggressive, or you play too reserved. But both of them will lead to the same thing: you getting knocked down, not having a reversal, and having to guess and take the offense. At least with the Rashid and a 2 out of 3, and especially against certain level players, not top level players, but certain, like the ones below them, the decent level players. Having a reversal is very important versus them because Marisa cannot check a lot of the things due to not having a reversal, but Rashid can, and he can also pressure you without having to give up a portion of her life. Like for example, Marisa, she has to command throw you, and if you miss the command throw, get punished hard. Rashid doesn't really have to do that, so he gets to pressure safely. So I think Rashid, outside of matchups, I think I might pick Rashid mostly in a 2 out of 3 setting, unless it's a matchup I like to play as Marisa. And when it gets to 3 out of 5, then that's when Marisa gets to come on more than Rashid, unless I'm fighting a character like Jury. Jury, regardless of 2 out of 3, 3 out of 5, I'm picking Rashid either way.
Okay.
So
okay.
yeah, there are some matchups where like this and that, but there are also matchup settings like 3 out of 5, 2 out of 3, first to 5, where I'd rather pick Marisa over Rashid or Rashid over Marisa. It just depends, But I haven't really tested Rashid out in a big tournament yet. All I've got was the Middle Eastern CPT events and the local tournaments, so I haven't really gotten to test Rashid much.
Oh, okay, fair enough. So I'm going to ask about modern controls because you talked about picking up Modern Marisa for a while. Now the player base for Street Fighter 6 has grown immensely, and a lot of that is due to having simplified inputs because people can really get into the game easily. And I wanted to ask and pick your brain a bit about that. With a larger player base and more people being able to come even into the competitive scene, do you think the implementation of modern controls would lead to stronger players overall, or do you feel like it could dilute the player base in that you have a lot more weaker people who are just able to like spam certain things to win?
I don't think modern controls are going to lead to more to weaker player base or anything. I think modern controls are made with casuals in mind to get them to try out the game, see how it feels, and then eventually maybe transition to classic once they like it enough. Usually in Street Fighter games, a lot of the players, a lot of the people, the casual people, they get turned off by the controls, having to do quarter circle, half circle, charge. So they try to do them and they can't, and they just say, okay, screw this game. Unlike Tekken and stuff, they can just smash on the controllers and they get all the moves in Tekken, right? maybe even Mortal Kombat, maybe even the Dragon Ball, whatever other fighting game there is. But with Street Fighter, you have to input the move precisely to get it. You can't just smash your control. So with modern, they made one button special moves, so it's actually now one button supers now, so it's much easier to get stuff out. Now, if they try modern and they like it and they continue on and then they improve and improve and improve, and then they start becoming solid, then they can see if they can try classic. Which then they'll have no issues, inputting their moves, because even in modern you have the shortcut specials and you also have the regular specials in modern. So eventually, when you play modern, when you get to a certain level, you're still gonna have to do the actual
motions. Yes.
Instead of the shortcuts.
And that's a follow-up question to that then. Do you think the addition of modern controls and having some pro players really pick up modern controls to play, does that kind of change the level of mind games? Because in the last interview that you had with Logan Sama, you also kind of mentioned, you're talking about Shuto and how Shuto uses modern Marisa and how he can switch between modern Marisa and classic Marisa when he's playing certain matchups. And he did something like that against Fudo that you mentioned in Street Fighter League Japan. So I was trying to pick your brain on that. Does that kind of change the way you have to approach some of your opponents, knowing fully well that they could have that switch between classic and modern if a certain matchup is not going the way they want it to
go? So the only thing, I think being able to switch between classic and modern is very strong. But to be fair, I'm not sure how feasible that is with the same controller. Like, for example, when I used to play on stick, and I play on stick anyway, and I switched from modern, when I went from modern to classic, it took me a while. It took me like a few games to get back to having the actual muscle memory for classic. So seeing Shuto do that mid-set, like after losing 2 games, winning 2 games, losing 2 games, and then going back to classic, it was actually very impressive, because the muscle memory, especially if you're playing on the same controller, the muscle memory is too used to the modern, so it's kind of hard going to classic. But I also thought about it, and it made me think the only reason he was able to do that is because he was fighting Dalsum. Right. And Dalsum is a slower paced, very slow paced character. So it's not like you have to make fast reflexes or fast decisions or fast whatever. It's a very slow game, Marisa versus Dalsum. So I think maybe, and it was only for 1 game as well. So I think maybe that was how he was able to do it. Maybe if he fought another character like Ken, for example, I don't think he'll be able to switch from modern to classic
easily.
Yeah, because you're gonna have to make fast decisions, fast reflexes, fast reactions, and all of that. So it's gonna be very hard. You need the muscle memory.
Oh, okay.
But he's starting to play more classic now. I think the only thing good about modern is that it slows the pace down heavily, and a lot of the players that were saying, "Oh, modern is too strong, modern is this and that," is because they're used to playing classic so much that they against classic so much that they don't really have a game plan for having something with inhumane reactions, So I think once they play against modern a lot more and they realize that, okay, this thing you can't do it here, I'm just gonna wait, then it's gonna get a lot better and modern is gonna stop being broken. I don't think it's broken, modern. I think it's okay. I think what's broken about it is just slows the pace down very heavily, and for certain players that could be very troublesome.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Thank you for that. So I was going to ask the next question regarding the CPT, because you mentioned that in your last answer. And I wanted to find out that with the CPT, especially with the regional qualifiers widening up with World Warrior events and all of that. And because of that, we get to see certain scenes that perhaps weren't as well known before. I can remember the last Capcom Cup. There was a player from Bulgaria, if I'm correct. His name was Kalmau, which was, and I was quite impressed with him, and I'd never heard of him before. And now we have something similar going on. And the Red Bull committee that happened in July, we also had, someone like a Jabi M, who some people should know, and I know him pretty well because I'm also in Africa, but like a lot of people perhaps were not as familiar with. How important do you think this idea of the highlighting of different scenes is for the development of the FGC as a whole?
So I was always against the idea of switching Capcom Cup from being the best players of the world, the best players in the world, the top 32 players in the world,
Mm,
and switching it from having the best players of each region.
okay.
So the idea of Capcom Cup became different,
Mm,
So I think Capcom Cup right now is no longer about the best players of the world, but it's more about showcasing the best players of each region. So
okay.
the best player from the UAE, the best player from South Africa, the best player from the
Mhm.
West Coast, the best player from East Coast, and all of that. The reason I say that is because Japan used to fill up Japan used to fill up the list back then
Yeah.
with at least 15 of them used to fill up
Yeah.
the list.
Yeah.
And now they only have two
Mm,
qualifiers. So they have potentially two players and maybe more if they can win the offline premiers. So I think Capcom Cup level got affected a bit. There might be some, matches where some groups where you can tell who's going to make
Who's
it
going
out of
to
this
win?
group, who's going to win of this group, like something like that. But that also allows for surprises. Anyway, I think a good way. I don't think Capcom should get rid of this. I think it should stay. But I think a good way to balance this out is maybe have more offline events and maybe bring back the point system, but also keep online premieres where online of each region, qualifies. I think instead of having, for example, each region gets two online premieres, two online
One.
events.
Yeah.
Yeah, make them one, and then maybe the other one make it like an offline event in that region, for example. So that
Oh.
way, the players get their chance to qualify and represent the region, but also get another offline event where a lot of international players visit their scene, and
Mm,
have more exposure to that, because offline events bring a lot of exposure to the scene. I remember the days where, for example, Brazil. I didn't know much about Brazil. I didn't even know Brazil played the fighting games back then. And then I see all of a sudden infiltration going to Brazil and playing with the players there, and that's how I got to know that there are actual Brazilian players. So I think moments like this is very important. And right now, the way the CBT system is designed, it doesn't encourage traveling. Like, for example, for me, I don't see any point in traveling to anywhere for a tournament unless I had big money or unless I was invited. So I think Capcom should bring that back and allow for more international. You saw how great it was for South Africa when a lot of the players came from Red Bull Community. I
yeah.
think that's what's missing right now in the CBT region. I think the regional dividing is good, but there's something missing. There's like a factor missing about the CBT that doesn't make it as great as it used to be.
Mm,
I think the idea is good, but can be something else alongside it can be implemented as well.
right. Yeah, I think that's good. I think it's a way to tweak it and improve it from what it is even now. I wanted to just move things a bit to talk about training and training methods, because the program that you're here for in itself is the Red Bull Level Your Game. So I wanted to ask, like, if you were to, what would be the greatest advice you would give to someone who is oncoming, who wants to improve in the game right now? What would be the one piece of advice that you would give to them?
Um, I think the one piece of advice is I can give to someone trying to improve is always remember to always make sure you're having fun with what you're doing. You know, if you make having fun your number one priority, if you're not having fun, if anything else is the priority, for example, like fame, like clout, as they say, if money and all of that, if that's your number one priority and that's what you're playing for, then over time, when you don't get these, it's going to affect the way you practice, the way you approach the game. And people got to remember, when they start out in a fighting game, it's kind of like a marathon, not a sprint. It's not about
Mhm.
how fast you get there, but it's about the journey you take. So I think having fun with that is the best way to approach it, because when you're having fun with something and you enjoy doing it, you're going to be more productive with it. You're going to be more productive. You're gonna enjoy doing it more. You're gonna have figured out ways to improve on your own. You're gonna watch other players playing to improve. There's gonna be a lot of ways to improve if you're having fun with it. And seeing the results of your improvement is also going to make it even more enjoyable, because you know the work you're putting in and the productivity that goes into your training methods is paying off. So a lot of that adds up. And I think, yeah, that's the only way you can do that, is by having fun. Like I said, if anything else is your main motivation of getting to this level, as it's going to, over time, if you don't get it, then it's going to, your mental and your basically motivation is going to deteriorate, and that's not really what we want to happen.
Right. So I wanted to ask you about something you mentioned there. You talked about some of the ways in which they could improve, including watching high-level play. I wanted to ask, as a training method, naturally it's very important to lab and to learn all of these things when you're learning combos, learning footsies, all of these things. But one of the things that people mention a lot as a means of improving is watching high-level play. How beneficial do you think watching high-level players is for players who perhaps aren't professional yet, who are in the lower rung of things? Because I understand how important it could be for a player like you to review matches, to review what you've done, what other players are doing, what they are doing, and you can incorporate that into your gameplay. But how beneficial is it for those who aren't quite as good, who are still probably learning the basics and just coming up?
I think it's still very important. It's just as important for high-level players compared to low-level players, because with low-level players, I think what they're lacking with their character, the new character, whatever, is a template to work with. So when they pick up a character like, for example, like Ryu, Rashid, or whatever, and they don't know what to do with them because they're lacking a template to work with. And I think that's pretty much what's missing from these low-level players. But when they watch high-level players, they're gonna start, asking, they're gonna start copying them, basically what I was referring to as a template. And then they're gonna start being curious about something like, why did he do this there? Why did he do that there? Why this? Why that? Why not this instead of that? So they're gonna have questions ready. And then there's a lot of top players that stream right now, including us, me and Angry Bird, and we answer a lot of questions. So then you can go to these streamers and say, oh, why did he do this and that instead of this? And why are you doing this instead of that? And then I could answer the question, or the streamer can answer the question, and they start, understanding more. And then there's a lot of guides on YouTube as well that help out. I think that's why it's important to watch high-level players, to learn, to copy. Even if you don't understand fully, but you can still copy stuff and you can still start doing them. And over time, because that's what I used to do in the beginning when I was trying to get better, I was watching high-level players, I was copying them. I didn't understand why they were doing it, but I was copying them. And then over time, it started making sense, like, oh, he was doing this for that. Oh, he was doing this for that as well. So I think that's why it's important.
Oh, okay. Okay, fair enough. Thank you very much for that answer. So I was going to also ask, because you're very vocal about the game, and one of the things in which you have talked about, and which has been the big topic of discussion in recent times, is the perfect parry system. As a mechanic, you talked about it as somewhat problematic, if I wanted to put it that way. And let's ask, could you elaborate on why you feel like it's such a problem, and how you feel that Capcom could go about fixing something like that to make it more beneficial for players?
So I think for perfect parry, I think the reward is too big compared to the risk. Basically, the perfect parry allows you to punish anything in the game if you can, get the right timing. So, and for that, it's good from the design standpoint, because there are some moves that are built for you to perfect parry and punish, but it can be exploited to the point where, let's say I threw him in the corner.
Yeah.
Then I went and I thought he was gonna jump, or I thought he was gonna not block. So I was like, okay, I'll meet him and then continue my combo. Then he perfect parries me, throws me back to the corner, and then the situation is reversed. So I punished him for something, took him to the corner, and then he perfect parried me, put me back in the corner, and back throw me into the corner, and then I'm now guessing for my life basically. I'm now on the defense. So I think the reward is too big. Even if you meaty jab and they perfect parry, they still get a back throw. I think the problem about it is not the perfect parry, but it's not the perfect parry itself. The perfect parry itself is fine, but my main problem with it is the risk and the reward are not evenly matched. Like I feel like the reward is too big and the risk is too little. I think if you were in point blank range together, like I'm right next to him, then trying to parry there is somewhat of a risk. Although it's not that big of a risk, but I think it's still somewhat of a risk.
Yes.
But when we're a bit further than that, and we're like, let's say, mid-range, then that's where perfect parry becomes very problematic, because there's basically no risk to trying to do parry. I could do a minus move from far enough. Like Rashid, for example, he has Stamina kick. Stamina kick is -3, so it's obviously when I press it and then you block it, it's your turn to press now.
Yeah.
So I could do that from that range, max range Stamina kick, and then try to perfect parry afterwards. In case you press anything and try to take it down. Yeah. And even if he reads that, he needs to be able to walk all the way to me and then throw me, because that's the only way you can beat parry. And if you don't, and if I know, and I mean, for example, if I happen to not throw a parry there and you walk, then I can punish you. So it makes the game a bit chaotic, I think the best way to fix it is basically just add more risk to parry, add more risk. The reward can stay the same for all I care, but the risk needs to be a bit more, either with more drive gauge consuming, or make it actually punishable on when you whiff a parry, for example, because whiffing a parry in this game doesn't have big consequences due to the drive gauge. First of all, drive gauge, you only consume half a bar for trying to parry, whiffing a parry, and half a bar is not enough. And I can't punish you unless I throw you. So if I'm not close to you, then you're not getting punished. And if I happen to press while you're parrying me, then that could be the end of the round for me. In a game where the corner is so deadly, it's kind of easy getting that corner back with the drive gauge, with the drive parry, and that's what I don't like about parry. It's very accessible, and the risk is a lot lower than, for example, like Third Strike. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that game, but Third Strike, when you parry, it's obviously you have to walk forward, right? When you parry, so just by design, you're giving up blocking because you're walking forward. And if you mistime your parry, you could get blown up for it. But in this game, it's tapping parry, so you basically, the game is still blocking for you. But the game rewards you even more if you get the perfect parry timing. So I think that's the difference between the two. One of them gives up blocking, and it's actually a high risk move if you mistime it, while the other game is not really a high risk move. If you mistime it, you get a normal parry. If you time it, you get jackpot, you get perfect parry, and then you could win the round because of it. So I think that's my main gripe with it.
Oh, okay, fair enough. That's been well articulated. Where I just have a couple of more questions to finish up. The first one is about the Japanese scene, in that recently one of the things they have been doing is they've been having this event. So like the Crazy Raccoon Cup, I don't know if you heard about that, the Reject Fight Night.
The Reject Fight Night, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So the Crazy Raccoon Cup, Reject Fight Night, and essentially was, streamers, other gamers, all of these people being coached by pro players, and they get to play and all of that. And one of the things that has really done, it has really increased the numbers and interest in Street Fighter 6 from casual viewers, casual players, all of those kinds of things. So I was wondering, do you think that this mode of content creation, of interest generation, do you think is something that can be replicated in other parts of the world, or do you feel it's something that is a bit more unique to Japan?
No, I think it has been actually kind of like implemented, just in a very, very different way, and in my opinion, a very bad way for the FGC.
Okay.
There was a couple of
AT&T.
Yes,
AT&T tournaments. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
They did that the same, but in Japan, what was the difference was they had the influencers, the the influencers, and they had pro players on top of them to coach them. So the FGC was actually involved.
Yes.
The AT&T Cup, it wasn't necessary for the FGC to be involved. I mean, if the influencer knows a player, then they could get coached by the player, obviously. But it wasn't necessary. Like if the influencer didn't know anyone, then they just go in and play and whatever. So I think the main reason that the big difference is that AT&T failed to implement the FGC, the pro players, while Japan managed to do that, include the pro players. So if you include the pro players, that means it's a win for the FGC and it's a win for the game, because that means, and it's a win for also for getting the recognition from the influencers. You know, the influencers have very high amount of viewers, so all of these viewers could be exposed to the pro player as well as the game and all of that. So it could be, you know, it's a win for both sides. I think that's what should have been implemented. The Reject Fight Night, they do that, and I think it's like is it a monthly thing or something? I'm not too
Well,
sure.
it's regular because the last one was the second edition, so they're going to have more of those.
Yeah. So the first one, all the influencers were like platinum ranked, and now in the second one, everyone is diamond and
masters. Yeah,
and many of them are masters as well. So a lot of them are improving, and it's like an ongoing thing. So it feels very great because even the viewers of the influencers, not the FGC viewers, the viewers of the influencers, they get to see how, you know, pro players actually play, you know, practice and all of that. So it makes it interesting. It makes it very, very nice, and it makes it very insightful for the viewers, for the FGC, for everyone. So it's basically a win for all parties. And I think maybe that's why fighting games in Japan are so big, because fighting games are always involved in things, you know, whether it's influencers, whether it's tournaments, whether it's other events, whether it's store openings and everything. So I think that's why fighting games in Japan are very big. AT&T Cup was good, but there was one part missing where they could have, you know, made a lot of use of it.
Yeah, the thing with AT&T and a little cup that I noticed was that it was more about games in general rather than fighting games. And this Reject Fight Night, and it's about fighting games.
So yeah, Fight Night.
But yeah, just to finish up, I wanted to ask if you could have any fighting game character brought into Street Fighter 6, who would it be and who would they replace?
Any fighting game character or any Street Fighter character?
Any fighting game character at all.
Honestly, I would like to see having Mortal Kombat characters is it's very hard because, you know, because they're brutal and all of that.
Hey, but JP is a Mortal Kombat character, isn't he?
That's true. I mean, one of my favorite fighting game characters, or maybe one of my favorite characters of all time, is Sub-Zero. So obviously I would be biased and I would love to see him in Street Fighter. I would play him right away. But it's having a Mortal Kombat character from a design standpoint, because they're very brutal, they're all of that, and that won't be allowed in Street Fighter. But other than that, I think I would love to see Kazuya in Street Fighter 6, or Street Fighter in general. Kazuya or Jin, like one of the Mishimas, Devil Jin, Kazuya, Jin. I think they're very iconic characters, and we've seen them before in a Street Fighter game, in Street Fighter Cross Tekken.
Yeah, Street Fighter Cross Tekken,
yeah, and they were very fun to use. So I feel like they already have the design for it. They already have the template, so they could just, you know, easily transition them to a proper Street Fighter game. And I think I would love to see that.
Who would you then replace that character with? So who will you take out of the Street Fighter 6 roster?
Lily. I think Lily is...
Not Zangief.
Zangief is Zangief. Like, he's weak, but he's still Zangief. He's still iconic. He's still very unique in his own game plan. The reason I say Lily is because she's not really memorable. Her game plan she's one of the most boring characters to fighting games, because literally she only does two things, and it's just, her design is not like, she's compared to T-Hawk, she's like supposed to be T-Hawk's daughter, T-Hawk's sister, whatever. She's supposed to be related to T-Hawk, and T-Hawk is much more, you know, memorable. But Lily is just, you know, I see her, I'm like, man, you know who else I see, and I'm like, whatever, Manon as well.
Really?
Yeah, because Mana she's so bland.
Huh.
Like there's nothing special about her.
Interesting.
The only thing she has special about her is the medal system.
The medal system, yeah.
But that's in game. When I'm talking like outside of the game, like design standpoint, she's like she's whatever, you know.
Ah, I see. Do you think costume changes could help with that, or it's just a fundamental flaw?
It's just a fundamental flaw. The moves, the normals, it's just like Marisa. If you see, for example, Marisa,
Yeah.
she can capture your attention right away when you see her play.
Yeah.
Like her head's hard. She has some of the coolest animations in the game. All of her supers are very cool. She's very well animated. While Manon has like, do you even remember anything from Manon like right now on top of your head?
Well, to be fair, I just had to write a YouTube script involving Manon, so I have to remember.
Yeah, but if I ask anyone right now who's a Street Fighter player, I'm like, okay, pick a move from Manon right away, and you got 2 seconds. They won't be
Yeah.
able to do that. They have to think. But if I tell you pick a move from Ryu, for example, or Marissa or Zangief, you'll be able to do that right away.
Okay.
So maybe that's
Okay, fair enough. Thank you so much. That's about all the questions I have. I'll take a little bit of offense because I actually use Lily. I'll take it in good stride. But thank you very much for.
no, I'm playing Capcom, not me.
But yeah, this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed talking to you, and
No problem. Likewise.
I'll talk to you some other time.
All right. Thank you, man.